All right, hopefully this makes sense of what I did for the valley plate. So the biggest issue, well, no, one of the biggest issues is the engine harness. It's very, very, like I already broke that corner right there. Um, it's workable, but it's a pain because you have to disconnect a lot of connectors to basically all these connectors, and this black piece right here gets basically folded or lifted out of the way to the right side of the engine so you can get to the intake manifold to get that out. So on the passenger side, obviously you take the intake tube off. I did not take out the intake box, it doesn't matter, but you're supercharged, and I saw there's just one line, a charge line. I believe that's all you would have to take off right here. You have to disconnect the injector driver connectors. One, two, three, and my brain. These connectors here for the spark plug, I can't remember what these are called, but one, two, three, those three connectors. The connector here, my light's too bright. So basically all the connectors here. So the three plugs, that connector there, up here, this connector, these two connectors for the cam timing motor, this connector here. So this bracket, this light is really bright. Let me try just the phone flash. All right, that's better. So this connector, that connector, this connector, and then the three plugs. The four injector drive connectors come off. The injector driver comes off. The bracket. And then this fuel line here going to the fuel rail, because your fuel rail on both sides will stay with the intake manifold when that comes off. So I depressurized my fuel system. I forget, it's online if you look it up. I'll try to find it. It's a fuse you disconnect. You start up the car and you let it die, just so you don't have fuel spurting everywhere when you take this connector off. You take this connector off, this bracket, these two water hard lines, they get disconnected at three spots. 1, 2, and then 3. And then these two water hard lines, they get basically put over here. You pop the top for this fuse box, and this part of the wire harness, there's a 10mm bolt in there. This comes off. Obviously disconnect your battery, but do your fuel, depressurize your fuel first. So then there's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 10mm nuts to get this plastic piece to be able to start going this way. I disconnected this little clip holder, this ground, the water temp sensor, and then on this side also the 4 connectors for the injector driver for the driver's side. This just comes off. And then there's another fuel line on this side that comes off right here, this orange, for this fuel rail. So when you take the intake manifold off, obviously this will be off. This gets unbolted. I believe this is part of the PCV system. This hose comes off. This connector gets disconnected. I think I might have said that this connector gets disconnected. What else? I think that's it on that side, and I think that's it for everything to get disconnected. So what I was able to do was, once that's all disconnected, you have a whole wiring harness mess, and you're able to take it and move it over to this way, zip tie it out of the way, carefully take this out. You still have lower mileage. I had, obviously mine was 113,000, so this was a lot more brittle. But just be careful with this. But you're gonna have to get it up enough out of the way to get the intake manifold out. I came up and towards the passenger side to get it out. Now, before you take out, did I keep it on? Yeah, so I disconnected the throttle body. So before I took this up and out, I just tilted it up and then disconnected. It's 2 long bolts and 2 nuts. And then just plate and then disconnect here. And these 2 airlines here. And then there's 1 airline on the back. Right there. But with the throttle, once it's disconnected, once it's tilted up disconnected, just get the gasket. I reused mine was good. And just put it over here. Just leave it out of the way. So I watched 2 videos, and I think there's only 2 videos of the Lexus ISF out there. And one thing that I found that the RCF and GSF has that the ISF doesn't is when you take an intake manifold off the first time sucks. I'll send you a picture of, there's a bracket at the back of the intake manifold that you can't even get to, that a line goes through. So when I was taking my intake manifold off, I was having a hard time. It just wouldn't budge. I was like, what is it caught on? I kept on going around looking. I couldn't find it. But then I just kept on rocking back and forth. And basically what I was doing was like, that bracket was like a hook, and going back and forth, finally got it enough where it was like this, and I was able to get it out. While I was doing that, and this is what the GSF and the RCF has that the ISF doesn't have, it's a thing called a pencil cap. And there's these little black caps. I don't know why the GSF and the RCF has them and the ISF doesn't, but they're very fragile, and I still don't know I do not know what their purpose is. That 2 of mine fell off, and they were the back 2 intake holes. Luckily my valves were closed, because I did find them sitting on top of the valve, and I was able to get them out. Now, those pencil caps, they go on the very tip of the fuel injector. That's on the fuel rail attached to the intake manifold. You can't buy those. I looked in every Toyota parts catalog, every Lexus, they don't sell it. So you have to buy the injector separately, and the injectors I think like $130 before tax and shipping and blah blah blah. But I did find a company called Injector Rehab, I believe. I'll send you the link. They're in New Jersey. The pencil caps were like $1.30 a piece. So I used those to replace the ones because I didn't know they had them, because all the videos of the ISF, they didn't have them. But yeah, when I was rocking it back and forth with that, trying to get that 1 line off that clip, it knocked 2 of them off. So got those. So be careful with that, and then order some of those just to have on hand, just in case the same thing might happen to you. So with the intake manifold, so everything clear out of the way. Throttle body off, or not throttle, yeah, throttle off. So you can lift up, out, and then passenger side. And it's pretty heavy. If you're doing it by yourself, it sucks. I have a bad back, and yeah, but you'll get to it. So the picture that you sent me, that's once the intake manifold is off. And now this part I'm doing by memory, obviously, because I can't see it anymore. But like I said, there's 4 knock sensors. Make sure, obviously, don't drop those. If you do, you have to replace them. The 4 knock sensors are size 12 socket. And then there's the black PCV, and there's, I think, 2 waterline connections, 1 air connection for that. You'll see it. There's 2 10mm bolts, and I don't know why Lexus did this, but they're reversed, so they're a pain. But if you have we call a Ritchie ratchet, or a ratchet socket, you can get to them. They're just like, you just have to figure out how to get to them. But they're not that bad. It's just the way that they're designed, it makes absolutely no sense. So that S fuel line, the connector for the fuel pressure sensor, the fuel pressure sensor has to come off, because you're not going to be able to lift the plate, the valley plate, out with that in the way. So I'm just repeating myself. 4 knock sensors, that S hard line, fuel line, the connector for the fuel pressure sensor, that black PCV plate, get that off. And then what a lot of people were coming across, so on the ISFs, they were breaking the connectors when they were trying to disconnect the primary injectors. And then a friend from Texas, he gave me the tidbit that you do not have to remove those at all. So do not remove those because they will break, and it sucks and they're expensive. Those injectors are, I think, over 300 a piece. So what you do is, I have a picture of that. I'll send you that too. Is basically once you have the black PCV plate off, the knock sensors off, the fuel pressure sensor off, the hard line off, all the bolts associated with it. So the black PCV is 10 millimeter, and then the actual valley plate is 12, if I'm not mistaken. So once you get to that point where all you have left in there is the main fuel injector harness, you just lift it up out of the way. There's like plastic clips that are holding it down. Obviously, take those off, but lift it up out of the way and zip tie it up, and then you're perfectly fine. You have enough room to get the valley plate off. Have a shop vac ready. I didn't drain my radiator. You can, but that just means more like fluid's going to come out once you pop the valley off. I just chose not to. So once you're ready to take the valley plate off, you'll get a pry bar. There's I'll point them out. There's 4 like points to put the pry bar to give you leverage to lift it up out. And once it's cracked, so basically it sucks. There's a pipe about this long that sits right here in the valley plate and in the back of the water pump housing, and there's 2 O-rings on that. So taking it out, obviously it's easy. You don't really care. The sealant's old. You're gonna take it out, but putting it in, it sucks. And mine, the O-ring on that tube, it rolled after I put everything back together, filled everything back up, and I saw a leak again. And then I did a borescope and I looked in there and I saw the O-ring was coming out. So I had to kind of redo it. But second time was a lot better because I knew what I was doing. So we used wheel bearing grease, greased up that, and did a dry run first with the actual valley plate, and then actually put the sealant on. I'll send you a picture of the sealant I used. I'll send you parts for new intake manifold gaskets, and then those the water line O-rings you need for that. And it's a little bit tricky, but yeah, either use a borescope or a mirror to check all the way around to make sure that O-ring hasn't rolled, and then that's going to leak from there. So you did all that hard work, and then you'd have to take it all apart again. And obviously putting everything back together is in reverse, obviously. One thing that helped me a lot is I used sandwich bags and just marked everything of where everything goes, because like in aviation, when I used to be in the Navy, I kind of winged it sometimes and end up with extra parts, and I'm like, where the hell did this go? And I can't remember. But just having bags, write it, 4 screws going to whatever, driver's side injector driver. It really helps out in the putting it back together and knowing where everything is. Yeah, I think that's it. Obviously, hit me up with more questions. Yeah, because I asked my friend who's a master Lexus tech in New Jersey, and then another one who's a master tech up in Riverside here in California, and both have never done an RCF or GSF before. So I was kind of in the dark, but it wasn't that bad. It's just a lot of tedious, like taking off little things, this, that, and the other thing. With me and my friend, when we did it the second time, we both knocked it out in about 5 hours. So that's taking everything out, resealing it, putting everything back together, putting cooling in it, and getting the car going. So yeah, just hit me up if you have any more questions. Hopefully this video made sense. Yeah.